talk to America's farmers, they'll tell you these are tough times. A combination of high operating costs, low commodity prices, and lost markets has had devastating repercussions on the agriculture industry and the communities built around it. CBS's Lana Zak is in Davenport, Iowa tonight with new details on the growing crisis.
Farmers say this has been a perfect storm. They were already battling higher growing costs and crop disease, and now China, which had previously purchased half of all U.S. exports, has pulled out.
U.S. soybean farmers are starting their harvest, but they face steep losses that could fuel farm bankruptcies and foreclosures nationwide.
This is awful discouraging. You know, we do our very best to grow a good crop to feed the world, and then we can't hardly give it away.
Many growers say they feel betrayed. Last week, the Trump administration gave Argentina a financial lifeline, a $20 billion loan. But Argentina then cut the price of its own soy exports to China, undercutting U.S. farmers.
We don't do something, we're not going to have no more family farms.
In Arkansas this month, hundreds of farmers packed into a church to plead for help from the government.
I'm in the worst shape right now that I've ever been in.
With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment. Joel's Tractors in Strawberry Point, Iowa saw a 30% jump in farm machinery up for auction this year.
For decades, garlic seemed simple. A seasoning in your kitchen. A crop tucked quietly behind bigger agricultural headlines like wheat, soybeans, and corn. But today, this humble bulb is at the center of a new global shift, one that almost nobody saw coming. Across Africa, from Ethiopia's highland terraces to Egypt's Nile-fed farmlands, garlic is emerging as an unlikely economic powerhouse, and its rapid expansion is beginning to reshape global supply chains and challenge farmers in the United States. This is the story of how Africa's garlic boom began, how it spread, and why it is now sending shockwaves through America's multi-billion-dollar agricultural industry. Welcome to New Africa Rising. Garlic is one of the most widely consumed foods on Earth. More than 30 million metric tons are grown every year. But here's something surprising. Only a handful of regions really control the global garlic market. For decades, the world's undisputed garlic giant has been China, supplying more than 70% of global demand. The United States, despite its wealth and massive farmland, produces only a fraction of what it needs. Most of the garlic Americans eat is imported. And for years, the story stopped there. But something changed. While the world was focused on oil, lithium, and rare minerals, Africa quietly entered the garlic market and grew faster than anyone expected. Africa has something that money cannot buy: fertile land, sunlight-rich climate, and farming tradition. From Ethiopia's ancient agricultural terraces to Nigeria's plains to Egypt's long, river-fed Nile Valley, garlic grows naturally and abundantly. But the real breakthrough came when new agricultural investments began supporting smallholder farmers across the continent. Better irrigation, better seed varieties, better training, better export logistics. What followed was a quiet agricultural revolution. Egypt now ranks among the top garlic exporters in the world, shipping to Europe, the Middle East, Russia, and increasingly, North America. Ethiopia's garlic output is rising rapidly, supported by cooperative farming groups, new irrigation networks, government-backed skill training. Nigeria, Tanzania, and Kenya are expanding garlic acreage as demand in Africa's 1.4 billion person consumer market continues to grow. Africa didn't just start growing garlic. Africa entered the global competition. Now, let's turn to the United States. Most American garlic comes from a single region, California's Central Valley. This land is fertile, but it is also expensive, water-stressed. Labor-dependent American garlic farms face rising irrigation costs, rising fertilizer prices, rising wages, and extreme weather impacts. Meanwhile, imported garlic, especially from China, is much cheaper. So American garlic farmers were already under pressure. Then Africa entered the market and changed the game even further. Because African-grown garlic can be cheaper to produce. Grown year-round in some regions closer to Europe and Middle East markets and transported through growing trade networks, this is not about Africa destroying American farming. This is about competition shifting. The garlic market is becoming multipolar, and Africa is now one of the poles. The key change happened when African exporters started improving processing standards, packaging quality, cold chain transport, and certification compliance for export markets. These upgrades opened doors. Egyptian garlic began entering European supermarkets. Ethiopian garlic began appearing in Middle Eastern restaurants. West African garlic flowed into regional trade networks. And as volumes grew, prices adjusted. Importers began to ask, why are we paying more when Africa can supply high-quality garlic at a competitive price? This is when the shockwaves reached the United States. Some American farmers began warning that they could no longer compete on price. Not because Africa is undercutting them unfairly, but because Africa now has lower input costs, favorable climate, expanding investment, growing export expertise. The playing field shifted. A new trade route is forming, a corridor linking African producers, Middle Eastern markets, European buyers, and global food distributors. This corridor runs through Port Said in Egypt, Djibouti, and the Red Sea gateways, Mombasa's Indian Ocean port, Lagos, and Abidjan in West Africa. Africa is building logistics power. This is where the true transformation lies. Africa is not just exporting garlic. Africa is building food supply chains. And supply chains are power. This garlic boom is part of a larger pattern. Africa is rising in cashews, cocoa, soybeans, rice, wheat, milling, tea, and coffee, refinement, fruit, and vegetable export, seed oil production, and now garlic has entered the field. This is agriculture stepping into geopolitics. Food is not just nutrition. Food is economics, trade, leverage, strategy, global influence, and Africa is now participating, not just supplying raw materials, but shaping markets. U.S. farmers are not giving up. Some are shifting to organic garlic to aim for premium pricing, partnering with domestic supermarkets to push locally grown, branding, adopting automation to reduce labor costs. But the truth is clear. The days when the United States could simply assume market dominance are over. The global garlic landscape is plural now. Africa is no longer a background player. Africa is now a competitor, and in some markets, a leader. Here is what comes next. Africa continues to invest in agricultural processing zones, export-oriented logistics corridors, high-yield crop breeding, large-scale cold storage distribution. These investments will scale garlic production further. Meanwhile, demand for garlic worldwide is rising, driven by health-conscious diets, traditional medicine, commercial food processing, global cooking trends. Africa is positioned for growth, not decline. This is not a momentary boom. This is a shift in global agricultural power. Conclusion: a new chapter. The world is learning something new. Africa is not just rich in minerals underground. Africa is rich in life above the soil. And as African farmers rise, global markets are adjusting. American agriculture is adapting. And the global food economy is entering a new era, shaped not by who has the most money, but by who has the land, the climate, the ingenuity, and the determination to grow. The garlic boom is just the beginning. Africa is not just entering markets. Africa is helping define them. This is New Africa Rising.